Welcome one and welcome all. Tonight we are live on BerryFlow Upstream number 118, entitled Era. How do you feel about that word right now, Blaze? Like era. What does that mean for BlackBerry at this point? I mean, we had the first BlackBerry kind of hit the scene like what, 1999 for real? Like even maybe some earlier devices before that. I mean, this is a long time coming, like decades in the making. Like, how do you feel about BlackBerry right now and kind of the latest news that we were able to get?
I don't know, man. It's an interesting scenario that BlackBerry has essentially placed themselves in. It's been, something that we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, even two or three, upstreams ago, we were discussing basically BlackBerry's exit from the hardware business and what that actually really meant. Like how do you go about even exiting the hardware business at this point? And I think if people haven't listened to Upstream recently, they should probably go back and listen to a few of those old ones and just see the conversation leading up to this exact conversation. It's an interesting scenario, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it plays out for BlackBerry at this point. I mean, in some ways, I'm kind of glad that the announcement is out there and they've sort of clarified at least what's going on now. But in other ways, it really does come down to that end of an era feeling in certain ways. And I don't know, we're gonna get into it a little bit further, but that's my off the top of the head thoughts right now.
Yeah, it feels like the end of an era. I think that's important, but at the same time, like I'm not pessimistic, right? Like I'm not down. Like there's a lot of emotion going on for a lot of the loyalists out there, and it's like I'm kind of happier than I am sad at this point because I think it's like you said a complex point, but for me at least, I think the brand has died, but the business kept going, and now if in the mindset or in the mind share they can kill or make dead that whole business mentality, basically like a way forward, right? They're securing the brand and the company of BlackBerry for the future. And at this point, if that's what it's coming down to, I think it needs to happen. Years ago, right? BlackBerry was going to sell itself. It was going to do this and that. And we've already seen like this kind of feeling go through our user base before. So I honestly am a little bit more happy with the fact that, like you mentioned, Blaze, they kind of put what they had out on the table now, and there's more clearly an understanding of what this roadmap is. Because when a device like DTEC 60 comes to market, the question is, okay, is that like the new normal, or is that like a one-off, like the Z3, right? Like a device that's
Yeah.
out there, but is it really, And I think, yes, these devices are out there, and the DTEC 50 and what's to come is going to be an important maybe next chapter in BlackBerry. But as you said, it is a little bit somber to see that in-house legacy kind of come out as it has. I wanted to jump right in, Blaze, like we did in some of our last upstreams, kind of just going through some of the Patreon comments because honestly, they get the vein of what's going on and can really focus the conversation, right?
Yep.
So I want to jump to the bottom. I'm trying to do this in some kind of order here. Tim Roth says, "What is the probability I will be able to buy the Mercury, or do I need to hang on to hope that Samsung uses BlackBerry patents to improve their S7 keyboard case, or do I bend to the knees of touchscreen keyboards?" Question, and that's a good place to start because one of the biggest question marks in the air right now is obviously this keyboard device designed by BlackBerry, the quote unquote Mercury, and whether or not it actually will or will not hit the market. So what do you see in any probability of that, Blaze? Like, do you think Mercury is something that's going to get off John Chen's desk, so to speak, and actually be seen? Or
Well, yeah, I mean that's part of the conversation as well. As John Chen has basically been teasing the fact that he has this BlackBerry designed BlackBerry that's he's been testing, and he's not sure whether or not he's going to release it. I think he has absolutely full intention on releasing it because if it really genuinely is the last piece of BlackBerry designed hardware, then why not? I think one important aspect that a lot of people have sort of overlooked is that the hardware outsourcing essentially is something that hasn't actually fully gone into effect as of yet, and it won't go into full effect until February 28th when they report on their next quarter. So, I mean, anything that was essentially already in the pipeline or on the roadmap is likely to make it outside of outside of the doors, right? So that obviously includes the DTEK 60, because even as we're talking about BlackBerry exiting hardware, they're still leaking information about the DTEK 60, which is rather humorous to say the least. But
through Canadian Parliament of all places,
right?
which I find totally amusing as well. Definitely go like check out Crackbird. There's been a really good kind of catalog of the things and the kind of quirky things that have come, right? Like John Chen's on the disruptors, even though like they were a company that was disrupted. Like just a lot of, and that's kind of the right, a lot of crosstalk going on right now. And it's like, yeah, we're ending hardware, but we got new devices. Yeah, we're a totally software company, but we're having conversations about radar and like all these other kind of hardware type components. I think the handset business is interesting. And I think as well, to Tim's point about the Mercury, we will see it because I don't think Priv is enough of a send off for that.
No.
You know, Priv is good in a lineup, but I don't think it is necessarily a direct definition of the iconic kind of mentality that BlackBerry really wanted to go for. And I think this final, quote unquote Mercury, whatever type device, that's going to be a really respectful device for keyboard fans out there. And I'm looking forward to it. What about you, Blaze? Like, what kind of range do you see it really coming into the market in?
I don't know. I mean, I see it as basically a mid-range device, but it's still going to be one of those classy mid-range devices. It's not going to be, something that is, ugly or anything like that. I think that they've already invested the money in it. They've already spent the money to go ahead and get it created and everything like that. And I think it's going to be one of those devices where, hopefully it'll attract some users and be a beautiful looking device. I don't think it's going to be one of those ugly devices where people are like, man, I'm not buying that. That's ugly. I think it's going to have maybe Passport Silver Edition appeal, I guess you could say, only with a 4-row keyboard. that'll be beneficial, hopefully. Yeah, I think it's going to be a nice device when it actually makes it out the door. I think it has to be nice because it needs to be a good send off for BlackBerry. You know what I mean?
And I don't even really consider it a send off, maybe the proper term, maybe near term, right? Because like we all know, and Blaze, I know you know this intrinsically already as well, is that like what John Chen's really done is he's just like pulled the lever back on how fast the hardware thing was going for BlackBerry. It's like Z10, Z30, Passport, Classic, Leap. It was going kind of all over the place. I didn't even mention the Q5 or the Q10 in that lineup too, right? There was a lot going on in those couple of years to try to build market traction. He's like, okay, our focus isn't there, right? We're not competing. Let's pull it back. Let's slow down. And I honestly think things like DTEK 50 and devices like the Priv kind of are a better representation of BlackBerry's initial efforts right out the gate, right?
Yeah.
As Blaze mentioned, this device is very likely going to come to light later on. And again, if they're truly fully closing things down before their, February quarter close, I think at that point, end of fiscal year, it's going to be a little bit more telling as to what that device is really going to be made of. It's like that's going to be that final representation for us. But I think in that same sense, right, there's a lot of potential for them to continue and build out. And now that they've maybe consolidated down to like some key form factors that the people like, that they can really go out and hammer it. And that's a device that you have like a Passport 2. Like this would be like they would go for something like a Mercury 2 because they don't necessarily need to focus a ton of money on kind of reinventing the wheel once it's made. So things like DTEK 50, where they can just kind of load Android on it and go at it, make a lot of sense. Like I can see maybe them having a more predictable, reliable, and concise product offering going forward.
Yeah. Which realistically they need, because I mean, how many times have we complained about there being no actual timeline for BlackBerry device releases? It just entirely seems random, right? Every time that they put out a device, it's like, oh, a new device. But there's no rhyme or reason to the actual like launch patterns of the phone.
BlackBerry needs to get back to that place of hype. Like hype is good, but you need to control it, right? There was hype for the Priv because they teased it in February and like set a trajectory for it, to launch in November. So that's important. They need to really get on that. And I think with, again, controlling what actual hardware is going out, or just having kind of rapid to market strategies where you can just pop a DTEC 5060 kind of within a quarter, right? And just kind of go at it is also kind of an interesting endeavor too. I find it weird those devices may be coming, you know, months apart from one another to a degree, right? I mean, DTEC 50 hit August 8th, and the rumors at least out there are for like October the 12th. I mean, excuse me, the 11th, or, you know, November 11th. But either way, right? It's kind of an interesting point to see what could be happening with kind of the rapid release of these devices. What do you think? Do you think it's a good thing they're kind of going so quickly?
I don't know.
I feel like they have nothing to lose, you know? That's
Yeah,
how
I
it
mean
feels to me. Like,
that's how I look at it too. But at the same time, I think that they you know, assuming the DTEC 60 comes out in October, there's going to be a lot of people who are like upset that they bought the DTEC 50 when they could have just waited for the DTEC 60. You know what I mean?
yeah. At this
But I
point,
mean, at the same time, I don't want to go blaming, you know, people out there for not being attentive to the situation either. But I mean, it's not like the DTEC 60 was any secret. It was, you know, you knew that there was a follow-up coming to it. The rumors have been out there for months, right? So
yeah. So if we go back like on the rumors and on like this, I know I'm hanging up on Mercury, but like that is the biggest question. If we get that out of the way, the rest of the conversation is pretty light, right, and enjoyable. If we talk Mercury, do you think this is a device, Blaze, that's going to be built like by a hardware partner, like in like joint development, like, you know, we take a form factor and kind of retrofit it with a keyboard? Or do you honestly think this will be like a BlackBerry, like designed and manufactured? Because John Chen gave the inclination of the latter, right, where it will be something they designed and basically brought to a manufacturer. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think it's gonna be retrofitted in any sort of way. It's not gonna be off of somebody else's, you know, reference platform or anything. This is basically, you know, it goes back to their old partnerships that they had in place, and it's going to be something that's, you know, basically their design, all of their protocols, all of their situation laid out, and basically totally relying upon them. And I think that's a pivotal point to actually, you know, put out there, mainly because, you know, there's been a lot of talk of like, what is the last BlackBerry? What's the last, you know, quote unquote real BlackBerry? I think
Passport SE.
Yeah,
sorry, I got stuck in there, man.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, when the Mercury makes its way out, that's gonna be essentially the last right, proper, real, whatever you want to attribute to it.
In-house BlackBerry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm waiting for it, and I think you will see that, and that is in the works. Now, I think longer term, right, the QWERTY has its appeal. Like, there are other markets, sub-markets that do sell QWERTY devices still. And I think when the reason you don't have the BlackBerry keyboard, you know, for Android, like on other Android devices yet, I think is because there's still a strategy going on with the licensing model behind their keyboard. And we've heard and read, you know, interviews where, you know, the device head is talking about licensing the keyboard and like partnering with companies so that it can meet like a quality expectation standpoint and basically audit and control a lot of what their hardware partners are doing to a degree, so that it still holds a little bit of, you know, truth to what BlackBerry is as a brand, so that they can have others personify what BlackBerry is in key markets. So alongside this news that they're exiting the market, they actually announced a partnership with an Indonesian partner, right? Which I thought was kind of interesting, talking about Typhoon, and basically they'll be selling BlackBerry branded devices that they've built and manufactured themselves to their own customers in that market, and they'll be licensing some of the Android BlackBerry software to do so. What do you guys think of a move like that for BlackBerry at this time? And is it maybe too small a move for enough of people to care about, or do you think it's right to kind of attach the brand right now to Indonesia, this growing, booming mobile market?
I think Indonesia is basically one of those markets where they still have a stronghold in customer base, and especially with BBM and everything like that. I mean, how many articles have we written about, and for how many years have we been hearing that Indonesia is a market for BlackBerry, right? So like, it only makes logical sense for them to go ahead.
It's almost like BlackBerry made the market in mobile market in Indonesia, you know, because like Blaze mentioned, it's been that long going. I want to welcome Brandon to our conversation here as well. Brandon, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, guys. I can't complain. I just
want to tell you where you jumped in on our conversation, man. We've been kind of already starting heavy. We talked Mercury, which if you have some thoughts on that, I'll definitely
okay. I'll just
wanna hear
I'll
some.
just head out now, guys. It's all right. I see you're all without me.
We figured we'd get like the heavier, more questionable stuff out of the way first. But no, right now we're kind of into it about, what really is going to come for BlackBerry now that we're seeing these types of partnerships with them licensing over to like Indonesian, device manufacturers and things like that. Like, do you think the model BlackBerry has right now for getting their software onto hardware is a good one for them? How do you feel about this news, this kind of end of era piece where BlackBerry is really in a transition, basically done a pivot in their own market, right? How do you feel about it, Brandon?
It hurts, man. It hurts. I mean,
full disclosure, guys. Full disclosure for all listening, right? I'm here with Canadians tonight, so
yeah, which is a whole other thing. Like, man, I've been trying hard not to rant on John Chen about that whole Canadian business, but come on, bro.
it's
so elaborate on it, Brandon.
a shame. Well, like I've reiterated, like the past 3 episodes, probably it's just the software game. It's really sad when you see a company who was made off of, the mobile space, and then now they're becoming a company that's very much lost that identity. And I mean, BlackBerry is a company that has multiple identities. I mean, we know them for security, and they still retain that. But I mean, what a lot of people recognize them for was being that mobile device, being that mobile provider. Back when they were big with the original BlackBerries, right? And now, I mean, for say what you will, sure, Bez 12 or whatever, Bez 13, the next one might be or whatever, that's going to have a mobile component. They have mobile like security software, right? But it's not the same. It's not. It's a more of a background. Like, it's not background. It's just, it's not the same BlackBerry, and it's sad to see that.
It's changed, and it's been changing for a while. I mean, even with what Thorsten Hines did for the company and kind of where it went and the new trajectory, like we've seen a really, really powerful side of BlackBerry in the software realm, right? BB10 is a staunch representation of what BlackBerry is honestly capable of doing with software, and I think that is a talent that may not fully still exist at BlackBerry, but there is a core piece, I think, of what BlackBerry is going to continue to be able to offer on mobile to continue to innovate and push the bar and push the agenda, so to speak. I think security and productivity were not so much a thing when the iPhones first came out and things like that. But with BB10, like it kind of took mobile to a new productive level, and it kind of became a new gold standard. And if there's any way they can transfer some of that to what their endeavors will be across the board, I think there's still something to be proud of there, right, Brandon? As you mentioned, like Bez 14 and things to come, like that stuff is going to still be relevant to Canada and the region, but it does lack some of that luster of what the media's representation of what BlackBerry is, a hardware pioneer. I can definitely see the sentiment there. Blaze, do you echo any of Brandon's feelings?
Yeah, I mean, nothing Brandon said, I can ever possibly disagree with, because he's right in that aspect. I mean, the only thing with me is like, I really dislike John Chen's comments on how Canadians should have gone ahead and supported BlackBerry more, when really, I mean, how many more passports could I have bought, dude? I've got one in every color. You know what I mean? Like, I can't get on board with his comments about how Canadians should have supported the brand more, or he thought that there would be more loyalty within Canada. I mean, at the end of the day, it's his job to go ahead and create brand loyalty. If there was no, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't blame Canadians for it if you're not giving them a product to actually, genuinely be proud of. I mean, a lot of love was lost within that relationship, and I don't think that, in terms of how John Chen is thinking, because he basically said that, he thought that the Canadian market would be more approachable for their devices and stuff like that, and we weren't. Well, whose fault is that? You're the one who's putting out the devices. You're the one who is in control of that. Did you give Canadians something to essentially be loyal about, or be happy about, or be proud about? You know what I mean? So that's the only thing that I can't get on board with. Like, at the end of the day, I give John Chen all the credit for going out there, trying in the hardware business, at least putting forth some effort towards it, and basically pivoting BlackBerry and keeping them alive as a company, even if it's not necessarily the company that I envision as being the best, suited for BlackBerry, whatever the case may be. But man, I just can't get on board with those comments about Canadian loyalty. It strikes me in all the wrong ways, especially, being a Canadian. And like I said, how many more devices did you expect me to buy, dude?
And again, I think that echoes back to what the BB10 line ultimately is now as we look back at it. Like, it's a great set of products, but at the end of the day, it never hit a point where a lot of people in the region were going for it, right? And there's a lot of failures along the way as to why that may be. And it can't all obviously be attributed to John Chen, but even the way forward now, like the approachability of Priv and DTEC 50 and how the markets are going to behave, I mean, he's got to give a lot of credit to the fact that he's got more carrier support in Canada than he has in the United States, right? There's a lot of things that need to be admonished. But
Canadian carriers are the only ones selling the DTEC 50, so
yeah, and Doug just dropped it here in our live chat. I think he's right on the money. Great product, damaged brand, and that damage I think is now lessened by the fact that they've quote unquote killed off the part of them that people were always attaching their negative sentiment, right? I don't think a lot of people had a bad experience with BBM per se, right? And I think that's not as tarnished and tainted maybe as the core BlackBerry hardware brand is. But if they can come about and really continue to push out some devices and keep at least the loyal people loyal for a couple more years, I think there's still a potential that a true BlackBerry QWERTY Android kind of concoction can really carve a piece of the market and take it for themselves. I'm honestly at a point where when I hear this news of like the Indonesian partnership and licensing on, I wonder how big that roof is, right? Like, well, what kind of partners can you now go to? And this was actually asked and actually answered. And I thought it was pretty candid of BlackBerry to go out and say what kind of partners they're going for. But they're basically aiming at these second and third tier type hardware partners. So not the Samsung, LGs, and Apples, not the main top tier players, but there's still a potential, right, to go out and again, go to key markets with key players and start making some money. And I think if that can grow and bolster, then you may see those larger deals start to happen. Do you guys see like a licensing potential or anything else out there for BlackBerry in terms of like really making a bigger leap with bigger partners? Like, could you ever see Samsung and BlackBerry partner on anything like to a larger degree than what we've seen with Knox and with the SecuQ tablet?
I don't know. I would like to see it, but I just don't. I don't think it's in the cards for them to go ahead and do it. I mean, like, even like Samsung was taking shots at BlackBerry, even though they are a partner. Like, basically, ditch your old BlackBerry device, come pick up a Samsung. It'll still be supported by all of our MDM solutions and Knox, and you can still use some of your old BlackBerry services. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't see that, and I think one of the key things for me at this point is that BlackBerry still has a lot of proving to do in terms of the licensing and stuff like that if they want people to get on board with it. I mean, yeah, they started with Indonesia, which is a great market for them to be able to go ahead and maintain, because we already know that they have a nice base of users there through BM and through their devices and everything like that. But I'm still questionable about these second and third tier partners. Like, how is the quality level on these devices going to be? Like, are they going, like, BlackBerry has already said that they're going to be approving these designs and so on and so forth, and they want to maintain a brand vision and everything like that. That all sounds great. How does that work out? Like, are these devices that these second and third tier partners putting out, are they going to be devices that people actually want, or are they just going to be devices that are going to languish on shelves, but BlackBerry's still collecting money on them and it has a BlackBerry logo on them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to be some quality hardware coming out there, and I'm not entirely too sure what that quality level of hardware is going to be with these quote unquote BlackBerry branded devices, and that's really, really questionable for me going forward. Additionally, I really question as to who they're going to essentially go ahead and continue these partnerships with outside of Indonesia, because they haven't done much talking about anything outside of Indonesia. They've stated that the devices will be available through Shop BlackBerry and so on and so forth. However, who are the partners going to be? That's one of the things that remains questionable at this point in time, right? So they even with all this news and all the information that BlackBerry has been pretty forthcoming with, there's still a lot of unanswered questions there that need to essentially be answered, and I'm sure they will be over time. But for now, it's a waiting process until they get all of these affairs in order and start actually producing some stuff, right? These BlackBerry branded devices.
I'm sure Brandon's like gonna go order on eBay like an Indonesian device and then use it in in Canada. And that's the thing, is like, is that gonna be on an honest potential? Like, are there gonna be so many BlackBerry devices now that like Blaze and I won't even be able to keep up with them? Like,
right. That's another question, right?
Brandon, how do you feel about kind of like going this route, like this type of strategy for hardware going forward? Do you think it's something that's gonna kind of work for BlackBerry longer term, or is it something that you think maybe in a short term will have some quick gain?
I just don't see the point. You don't have margins on it. I just don't see what the point. I guess you said that they can just license it off, and then I guess they don't have to worry about the hardware. Just sure, do that.
Yeah,
but
the model is all about like their version of Android, right? That's the only thing they're selling, really.
I mean, what are you gonna spend operating costs to do that stuff for I don't know, how many phones do you think they're gonna sell? Like, I just don't see them being able to sell that many devices to make, some of the other aspects that we're talking about here, the software side of things, make it worthwhile, especially like the Android specific software stuff that we're talking about.
John Chen looked at Amber Kanwar, right? He looked at her and he said, the Indonesian market sold 33 million phones last year. So it's like, okay, if that's the ceiling for the market, then we kind of know what ballpark they're kind of aiming for, right? If they could sell 1 or 2 or 3 million, they're going to be happy, right? Just with the recurring software like licensing and revenue. So it's interesting. What I want to show you guys is kind of how, like, since June of this year, we've known this was going to happen. Like, this has been in the works for a minute, and even they've admitted. But what I'm showing here is BlackBerry's fiscal financial highlights for the 2016 year. And as you can see, it's all about like a strong foundation for growth and really building out on what that's going to mean for them. So if you look, we're seeing a pretty obvious trend toward this type of model. Like, what's hurting them right now is obviously the service access fees that were attached to the old devices and how that's been continuing to go down, right? But they've alone gone ahead and been able to bring up their software and services to basically offset that service access fee loss, but it's still going to continue to hurt them in the next couple of quarters. But then you look at their strong cash position and you see the growth, this orange section here that they've been able to put on top of through business acquisitions at a pretty good rate for them. They basically have marginalized their losses. And then even up here, device business trending toward profitability, you see how the cost cutting that John Chen has been doing is basically made it so easy to kind of break even in the hardware business. So if they can even make a little money, why not do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it hurts to hear, right? Because it's hard to admonish the fact that BlackBerry's finally kind of gotten around how to make sense of their own marketplace. It's just we want them to do better on the one they're currently in. What do you think about DTEC 60, Brandon? Yeah, Blaze and I kind of glossed over it a little earlier, but is that something you'd really go for? I just saw some of your comments in our BerryFlow group, and I'm thinking you're not too keen on it.
No, I've never been less interested or less excited by a device than a DTEC like 60. Even the DTEC 50, I was like, the name's lame. First off, like, get out of here with the DTEC stuff. No one knows what that means. You know, I have a prib. So like, people who are looking for it, like, what is DTEC? I don't know. Where's the 60 come from? What does that even make? That doesn't even make sense. I don't get it. I just don't understand the entire.
2 times D30, obviously. No, I've read it. It's kind of it's whatever, you know. At this
is a BlackBerry branded device. Before its time, it was basically like,
it doesn't matter,
not
right?
Really, not really.
BlackBerry didn't build it. We don't care. Whatever. But at the end of the day, like I'm using my DTEC 50 and Blazes as well, and we're like, it works. It's just good. I'm gonna use it. I'm excited about the DTEC 60. I know Blazes too, just for the simple fact that like for me in the marketplace, if you look at its specifications, it's falling kind of right in the middle of a market they want to still be in, right? There's some people who want a priv, right? There are people who obviously bought the priv and maybe they want an all touch option. Maybe they want a keyboard option. I mean, that's all it is. It's basically servicing that user base that they have installed and maybe getting a couple new ones. But
yeah, I'm more excited about I think the Mercury device is going to be the device that I'm really excited about. And I think a lot of people will be excited about. So. I mean, that's the thing. Why are they wasting everybody's time with these other devices? You know, why are you going to put out another touchscreen device? Like, when did the DTEC 50 come out again? It was this year, right?
August 8th. August 8th, yeah.
You're going to put out another touchscreen device, like less than half a year away? Like, how does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand what they're doing.
I think they're putting something on the shelf, right? Obviously. But I think as well what they're kind of doing is they're telling their story before and trying to get a hold of it, right? Because media could have been much, much worse with them about this. And they have been, right? They've been trashing, BlackBerry's finally dead, blase, blase. You sent me that.
I don't know how many BlackBerry obituaries I read already, so.
Yeah. And it's like it's been this, I think it's a good thing that's all happening. Like, good. Let people get it out. Let them reference the fact that, if I'm writing about BlackBerry in the future, it's beyond that reality, right? But I think, honestly, the DTEC 50 is a showcase of, all right, this is the strategy going. We're outsourcing. The earnings call happens. They put the news out there. People are like, oh, BlackBerry's dead. And then the DTEC 60 is, no, bitch, we're still alive, Like, we're still here. We're still doing it. And that's it, right? It's a market piece. It's a statement, really, more than anything else. Like, whether it sells is kind of irrelevant because they didn't build it, right? They're just outsourcing the components and getting it all done up for them.
That goes back to what I was saying about Chen not caring if he makes the money on it because he didn't necessarily pay much for it anyways, right? If anything. Yeah. It was created off the shelf. He just pointed to parts and pieces and said, build it. Yeah.
There was a good point that was just mentioned in our group by Anil, and he mentions like it would be interesting if some of the rumors do come true that this TCL device, the first time this hardware is coming to market, will be in the DTEC 60 device as well, that this may be kind of a quote-unquote custom BlackBerry build. And again, we don't know a lot of the details around that or whether that's even true, but it would be kind of interesting if that's the kind of partners and deals that they can get made, right? Where they're getting kind of early rights to certain devices in hardware bases.
It seems like they're setting it up as, I'm not stating that as fact, don't anybody get it twisted, but it seems like they're setting it up as almost an announcement for like, okay, TCL is going to be our North American partner in this business relationship. You know what I mean? It seems like the DTEC 50 was like a test device. The DTEC 60 is kind of like possibly their secondary announcement where they say, okay, well, here's our relationship. We announced our relationship in Indonesia. Here's our relationship for the North American market. So, I mean, total speculation, but I mean, why not at this point, right? You already created 2 devices with the company, so you might as well continue on, if possible, to actually go ahead and create some sort of agreement with the organization. Why not do it, right?
Brandon,
you're already in there.
Yeah.
I'm hearing Blaze's points right now, and I'm reading through our Patreon comments, and like, there's a lot of people I think who feel the way you do out there. Merritt here is talking about, do you think the earnings call indication to get out of devices was purposely meant to appease investors and press? It was obvious already with the DTEC 50. BlackBerry did not need to be so definite. Makes Chen look good about his December decision, right? As well, comments like, do you think BlackBerry is messing up its marketing again? DTEC 60 may come out in a week or so with no indication yet. It could have totally changed a spin at the earnings call and could have made things a little bit more positive if they also announced like a device alongside. And do you think BlackBerry is underselling BB10? If this is the most secure platform with DTEC not up to par and zero consumer interest, it would maximize its premium on security and maybe charge more. If a government or enterprise needed max security, they should have to pay for it, right? That's that NIAP BB10.3.3. Keep BB10 for them, but make a bigger profit on it. Like, do you see any of those realities maybe as a point here? I mean, you're clearly, you know, not pleased with the news, but at the same point, like the current devices that are in market are getting an update. And to get that update, they kind of have to have a purpose behind it, right? Or do you think that's just more kind of fodder for some of the loyalists out there?
You talking to me? You're asking me,
Yeah.
or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you feel? Like, do you honestly think, like, with those kinds of concerns being voiced, do you seem to feel that way? Like, was it more like of an investor appeal to kill the handset business, make them happy, show them the focus is on software, but kind of then keep putting devices out?
Pretty sure that was John Chen's modus operandum since day one. There's probably a whole bunch of devices that were already kind of, you know, they had to put them out just because they had done so much background work to do it, and they were probably going to lose less money by attempting to sell them than to full out canning them. And I think his end game really was to like we've seen, just slow down the hardware business and shift all the way over to software. I mean, he's not a hardware guy. He doesn't, like, from his past experiences, he's a smart guy, but he's not a hardware guy. And I think he's really putting BlackBerry into a light that he's comfortable with, which is software. And I think that's really what we've seen. So whether it's to appease shareholders, yeah, I think it's to appease shareholders, and I think it's to appease shareholders because I think that's what he thinks will be the most successful way for BlackBerry to become profitable again.
I'm really thinking along the same lines because, as Blaze and I mentioned before you came on, it was like a lot of cross speak, right? You say one thing and then something else kind of happens. And I think to a degree that's probably by intent. And I think there's a little bit of mixed communication going on and different levels of clarity, because there's a point where you got to kind of control the media spin, so to speak, and you have to kind of spin with them to kind of give them the story they want. But if we look at kind of the way they're going, I think if this is what's going to appease the most people and bring that shareholder value up, and he can really start building the business again, they still have so much IP, right, that they can still use and leverage, even with other partners, right, to defend what they're doing on Android. Do you feel at this point that it's like the start of a new chapter for BlackBerry, Brandon, or do you feel like it's more an end of an era?
I think it's the end of an era, to be honest. I think that new chapter that you typically see was already started a while ago, and it's just going to continue. And this chapter is just ending now for hardware, really. I mean, hardware's not completely done. I mean, they still have those deals like we've been talking about, but I think in terms of what we know as hardware, my gut is telling me that this new hardware deal isn't going to be very successful, and I think next year we're going to see the headlines saying BlackBerry no longer going to be doing any phones, you know. So,
and that's something we've echoed like on our after shows here and things like that, right? That it's kind of just been this slow let down, so to speak, out of the market of handsets, right? Or it certainly feels that way. And that, you know, it's kind of when John Chen jumped in, that's the vibe we all got immediately, right? Like, oh, this is just the slow way out of handsets. If that is the case, and we don't really know, right? Devices could pick up and these deals could work and it could build out and, you know, are still up in the air, especially with radar and things like, you know, he's even said and talked about, he basically said, I went to a town hall, I spoke with my employees, and I said, we need you guys in hardware, right? We need you engineers, but I don't need you building phones. I need you building like smart boxes, right? And IoT things and, you know, other things that they're going to be able to leverage into new growing industries that they can have more control over their, you know, insurgence into. But honestly speaking, if it's a slow kind of pull out of handsets, I kind of put Perv to market, you know, and that he's even trying with these TCL type partnerships and things like that. Like, I got to give him at least a little bit of respect for the fact that he's honored to a degree what BlackBerry is, like the DTEC 50. Like, and Blaze, maybe you can echo on this a little bit, but out of all the hardware they could have chosen, I feel like DTEC 50 is somewhat respectable to the BlackBerry lineage, like, you know, putting the convenience key, having great aspects that we appreciate from a BlackBerry phone, you know, like the good speakers, good battery, all that stuff. Like they did do a decent job of trying to honor some of that history and legacy without maybe fully understanding what it means for, you know, and what it stands for from an iconic perspective. Do you feel like that was kind of honored here with the, you know, D-Tech 50, and is that why you may be excited about the D-Tech 60, Blaze?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it kind of does harken back to some BlackBerry stuff with the convenience key and everything like that, but I don't know. I think I was just excited.
It doesn't get you as excited, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of excitement that comes with it, basically by BlackBerry essentially putting out another new device. But I think my main excitement with the D-Tech 60 is mainly because I like the D-Tech 60. Like it's not based on anything from John Chen or anything like that, or, you know, anything within the company. It's just that I like the D-Tech 50 for what it is. So a larger one with larger specs fits my criteria, and that makes me excited. It literally has nothing to do with BlackBerry. Like if somebody was to say, yeah, you could have this basically as a branded as an Alcatel device, then I'd probably be just as happy with it. I don't know what that says about me. I don't know what it says about the state of BlackBerry either, but
that you're a traitor to the cause. No, I'm just kidding.
Pretty much.
I think
those will be the comments later.
Yeah, but those will come regardless, right? You could go back to BB10 and they're going to call you a traitor on the probe, right? So you can't win. I think honestly, like with the D, right? It's thin, it's light, whatever. And I think the D-Tech 60 is going to be a good follow-up. And I think there really isn't, at least right now, a device in the market that is the D-Tech 60. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no device that matches it kind of spec for spec that is like widely available. And I think if they can do that with the D-Tech 60, it is a little bit of a unique type of a BlackBerry, where the D-Tech 50 like is an Idol 4. Like there's no way around it, right?
Yeah.
Where D-Tech 60 might be hard to kind of mirror in that same sense. Like, yeah, it's a TCL reference, but it's not one we've seen before. And maybe comparable to an Idol 4S, and they'll just kind of cross compare it that way. But I do like that the specs, and I wanted to pull them up here. Look, but I think we did that last podcast as well. I don't want to hammer the point here on the D-Tech 60, but at least the way it looks, it kind of lines up with like where a lot of devices are going to be. Like we saw the Galaxy Note 7 and we're seeing iPhone 7S or 7S Plus and whatnot. It's like, well, in the marketplace, and the D-Tech 60 kind of places itself right in the middle. If they can get a decent price point on it, I mean, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it does. Where do you realistically see a device like this coming in at, Blaze? Like, I know we talked about it a little bit last week, more of like where we want it, but where do you now realistically see it with it being, you know, going up on pre-order and, you know, different things like that at different prices and whatnot?
Well, realistically, I mean, I think that the rumors are pretty much in line with what it's supposed to be. $699 Canadian, which that is absolutely ridiculous, and part of that is not necessarily BlackBerry's fault. The part of that is just basically the Canadian market when it comes down to the dollars and cents of it all. But at the same time, that basically puts it at $499. Well, give or take $499, 530-ish US dollars.
US. Right around 40, and then the tax and
taxes and the currency exchange, so on and so forth. I mean, it's over $500 when you do a direct exchange on it, but realistically, you know, they're either going to bump it up past what it's supposed to be, or they're going to lower it just for the sake of sales. And you know, BlackBerry doesn't have a history of lowering the price just for the sake of sales. So, I mean, I want to see it come at $499 in the U.S. market. Realistically, I want it to be $399 in the U.S. market, but that's not going to happen.
They're probably like, dang, we sold a lot of D-Tech 50s. Like, let's do a D-Tech 60. They're like, oh, crap. People like this.
Realistically, I see $499 plus, you know, for the U.S. market. I don't even like bringing up the Canadian price, because Canadian price is just freaking outrageous. So
how do you guys get around that? Like, that's still money in dollars for you guys, you know? Like,
it's hard out here for a BlackBerry pimp.
At least you're like the only BlackBerry pimp, so it's like if someone's got to do it. It better be you, Brandon. The price just is obscene to you, right? You're not about it.
Yeah, no, get out of here, man. Get out of here with those prices.
Do you think that's like the downfall of BlackBerry hardware, that they could just never get the pricing right?
Yeah.
No, man. The downfall was the BlackBerry Storm.
Kevin's about to hop on this podcast right now.
I said that just for Kevin.
Right. It gets heated in our BerryFlow group, guys. Let me tell you, we don't talk for days just because like let's let it cool down. Let's let it cool down. Yeah, it's like, you know, if it come if I both when I get the DTEC 54 like $399 or not $399, $299. I feel like there's $100 markup already in there. And I feel like on this device, it's probably going to be the same, right? It's going to be another $100 markup. What bothers me is the further they get away from like the 1+3 deal, you know, which is $399, the harder it becomes to justify, you know? And all of BlackBerry software elsewhere, it's tough. It really is, because you can get the launcher, the keyboard, the hub, and all that other stuff, and not have to go through, you know, a totally, you know, BlackBerry built device.
Yeah, and that makes it an even harder sell for anybody, because I mean that's a lot of the feedback that I've been basically getting as well, is like, even when people just generally ask me, they're like, you know, what phone would you use, or have you considered this phone? And I say, no, I'm going to get like the DTEC 60 or whatever. They're like, well, why wouldn't you just buy the Samsung S7 and use the BlackBerry software? Or why wouldn't you just buy like the HTC 10 and use the BlackBerry software? Because you're no longer limited to just the BlackBerry hardware at this point, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios out there, and I think that's how most people are thinking. Like, why would I buy that device, pay $100 premium or whatever in like BlackBerry tax, and
BlackBerry tax is
right? Like, why would I do that, right? And then you could tell them all about the security aspects of it and everything else, and then 9 times out of 10 they're like, whatever, man, I don't care about that crap anyways. So it's really a hard sell. Also, did you notice that Bell is basically selling the Alcatel Idol 4, which is like, you're basically selling 2 of the same damn devices, which that just strips more BlackBerry sales out of the factor. Like, no one's going to buy a DTEC 50 when you have the Alcatel Idol 4 sitting right next to it, which is like $100 cheaper and comes with a VR headset. You know what I mean? Oh, man.
Still just totally different users to a degree, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but
it's
at
like
the end of the day,
you're going to see that versus, you know,
you're going to look at the price tag and, you know, trying to explain security and all that stuff. Well, it's got some security keys injected into the computer chip, and it's like, bruh, no.
Stop with that.
Right?
Here's I want to pull this up.
I get it. I understand it, and I can appreciate it. But, you know, people out there spending $400, $500 on a phone are going to be like, yeah, well, this one's $100 cheaper, so whatever.
Definitely. Here's a kind of cross comparison between some of the specs, right? This is screen size, resolution across priv, and this is supposed to be not that device. You know what I mean? DTEC 50. But yeah, this is a kind of cross comparison between what you're really going to get between the two. You get the 820, which is kind of yesterday's specs, but it's still kind of rolling out right now. 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigabytes on board. It does have an SD slot, which I was really surprised to see the 1+3 didn't. Yeah, it comes in 64 gigabytes, but there's no expandable storage. Like 3,000 milliamp hour battery, 21 camera back, and then 8 megapixel front. It's just kind of just like a beefier DTEC 50. And Brandon, honestly, the performance between, you know, DTEC 50 and 60, it may be noticeable, but it's probably not going to be like, you know, game changing for anyone. Like, honestly, I feel like between priv and these DTEC devices, it is game-changingly different. And maybe that's just like an undersell of the 808, but it's going to be interesting to see. I think 4 gigabytes of RAM on a phone is like kind of a sweet spot right now, especially with all the apps and games and all that stuff. It's kind of a good place to come in at. And 165 grams is like pretty light as well. So they did it in a manageable way without going too heavy on the battery. I'm looking forward to it. And
That battery has people concerned though, because they're like, especially Priv owners, because the Priv owners are like, well, I don't get that good a battery life on my Priv, so how is the 3,000 milliamp hours going to take it? But
yeah, I think that's the difference between 808 and 820.
yeah,
There's a lot.
sure.
There's a lot of stuff, right? Even like they came out very quickly with like, what was it, the 8s, 15 and 16, like, or something like that, and they kind of outdid the 808 rather quickly, the 810 and things like that, just to kind of get away from it because it wasn't necessarily where they wanted to be. I'm kind of stoked because I think honestly with Doze and like a lot of the pieces that are coming together with subsequent versions of Android, I think this is going to be pretty on the money. One of the things I would have liked them to do, honestly, is just go with the lower screen resolution, like keep the DTEC 50 screen resolution and pair those specs, and the thing's going to sip at the battery as opposed to kind of drain at it. And that would probably put it in a good place. But, you know, Quad HD is Quad HD. Do you know if this is an AMOLED panel or not, Blaze? Have you heard of anything in the specs you've read
I
around?
can't remember it now. I pulled up some of the information, but
I've heard some places it is and some places it isn't. I've heard both.
yeah, I don't think anybody really knows. That just basically shows that there's too many rumors out there and not enough facts. So. It's also confusing because basically BlackBerry has taken bits and pieces from all of the different TCL devices and combined them. So who knows what they actually ended up mixing in there, right? Like they took the 2560 by 1440 display from the Idol 4S, and you know they took the body of the TCL 950, which was just technically officially announced, and they magically put them both together, which makes sense. I mean, TCL already owns the parts. It's not like they're, you know, out there buying new parts or anything like that. They're just swapping the internals. But it just goes to show you that, like, even with the spec sheets out there, not every single thing is known about this device because of the fact that it's a mishmash of parts from a third-party provider, which isn't necessarily locked down as of yet.
Definitely kind of a tricky place. At least now with the 950 out, we're going to be able to get to see a little bit more of like what we're working with on all this, you know?
I wish BlackBerry had like stolen some of the features from the 950, because the 950 you can copy apps and everything like that. Like, I don't know if anybody looked at it. I mean, it's totally off topic, but you can, like, on the 950 it has like some sort of special, I don't know, Android integration, whatever the hell it is, where you can basically copy applications. Like you can have dual installations of the same application. So like if you wanted to run like 2 Instagrams or 2 BBMs or whatever, it can copy applications and you can run 2 different scenarios of those applications on there. It's kind of crazy.
I think that's pretty cool. One of the things I think is people need to also take into consideration, like mentioning going back to that battery piece, Blaze, is that it does have Quick Charge 3.0 as well. So, you know, I know Passport takes forever to charge, you know, and that's like, oh, that's one of the main kill points. But like DTEC 50, it's a 2610 milliamp hour battery, I think. And because it has Quick Charge 2.0, I can quickly top it up. And same with Priv, right? With this, it's going to be even easier with that new technology. But yeah, it does have some interesting stuff. I'm looking through it right now, and that's pretty cool. And I like it. It's saying here, like, you know, you get a multiple, you know, clones of apps, basically. That's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, like you could run 2 BBMs, for example. I don't know why you would want to do that, but I'm just saying.
Who knows, you know? It might come. Just like we got some weird extra software tidbits from, you know, with what we got on the DTEC 50. Definitely interesting. Interesting that the 950 comes with 64 gigabytes of internal storage as well.
Yeah, and see, that goes back to what I was saying about the mishmash of parts, man. Like, even though that spec sheet is out there, you know, for one, we don't know that spec sheet is like, you know, the finalized spec sheet. That is still kind of subject to change because BlackBerry has never made it official.
Yeah, I like the hybrid SIM slot. If that comes over, that's going to be pretty cool, where you can do a dual SIM or SD card. If that comes, I think that's again, harkens back to those BlackBerry days with the dual SIMs, you know, in foreign countries and all that. Could be cool. I'm interested to see what's going to come. I'm pretty optimistic about it, honestly. I feel like the news, wow, disheartening for sure, end of era, sure, is kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people. And that kind of brings us into like our last topic here. Dallin came out of nowhere with an editorial, and he's been on an iPhone. He's been on an iPhone, guys. Like he went back, bought a SE, is using it. A little too heavy for him, but he's kind of put his thoughts out there, and he's like, I don't care, you know, I want my BlackBerry. And he talks about how there's just something about a BlackBerry, you know. And I think that legacy will be for like kind of lasting in this business. And 10.3 is coming, and people are going to be honored with what's going to go forward. So definitely go check out his piece if you want to, you know, cry a little bit.
I like Dallin's piece, but here's my only problem with it, and it's not necessary. It's nothing against Dallin. It's nothing against the article or anything like that. It's just my own personal feeling is that I'm not ready to write the retrospective on BlackBerry. I'm not ready to write the obituary on BlackBerry because BlackBerry isn't necessarily done yet. Like people will say, you know, whatever. Like they're gonna call me a fanboy. They're gonna call me, you know, delusional, whatever the case may be. That's fine. But the way I see it is that, yeah, they may have outsourced their hardware, but there's still going to be essentially devices on the market. Whether or not you want to buy them or not is an entirely different story. Whether or not you can even buy, if you can even buy them, you know, maybe there's only one device that you really fall in love with, but it's only available in Indonesia or whatever the case may be. I'm not ready to write that obituary as of yet or that retrospective because to me the story is still ongoing and we're not completed as of yet. And, you know, it's still going to be an ongoing thing for at least a little while until we actually see how the full story plays out, how these BlackBerry branded hardware devices end up positioning themselves within the market and what they look like and how BlackBerry handles it and what they do with software. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, yeah, you can write the headlines, you can say whatever the BlackBerry's done, whatever, finished, whatever. That's your personal opinion, cool, whatever. But there's still much more to this story. It doesn't end on this particular note. The story is gonna play itself out, and we're not there yet. So I'm not reflecting on any of my past purchases or anything like that, or, you know, crying over BlackBerry 10 because the story isn't done yet. So
yeah, it's definitely not. And Dallin's piece is more to the point of the fact that while the news is here, there's still a lot of stuff to look forward to. And I think that's to your point as well, Blaze, that there's still so much stuff that's still churning that it's a little early to write that story. One of the things I find that's going to be most coming here is that I feel like if BlackBerry can continue forward with some of what they're doing, they're going to be able to put some nice stuff to market, and people are going to start getting impressed again, I think, over time. And that will really do the long-term justice of whether this is going to go forward or not for them, you know? It's going to be a telling piece. I want to jump into our after show here soon, gentlemen. I want to talk about a TechCrunch article with Ralph Pinney of BlackBerry, who was pulled in 2012 with that Paratech acquisition. He's heading up the device piece. Did a really nice interview with TechCrunch, kind of clarifying some of the stuff we've kind of danced around here in our conversation. But as an end of an era it may be, I think we need to look forward to what's to come to see kind of what this new age of BlackBerry is really going to hold. Brandon, are you going to have a drink for BlackBerry one of these days? You going to hit the bar up and just kind of have one for BlackBerry? Or?
Every time I'm at the bar, man. Every
Is that
time
what
I'm
you
at
right
the
now?
bar, I see my Priv there on the table.
Yeah, I actually pulled my Priv out of the drawer the other day and just kind of admired it.
I have a drink for Torsten, you know, the OG, my OG BlackBerry CEO with Torsten. That's when I came onto BlackBerry. I don't know. And I guess you're more of the Balsillie and Lazaridis, right?
Less than Blaze, right? But more or less.
yeah.
Playbook in the 9900.
Is that a nice way to say I'm old, James? I hate you.
No, I think Brandon said that. Yeah. I had to toss that one your way, man. It's been an interesting legacy, and I think just in an innovative way that they came to the market, they're going to continue in the market. And I think, honestly speaking, more long-term, maybe 5 years out, this licensing of other people's hardware is going to be a bigger thing to come. I mean, look at the way the laptop exists now, right? Microsoft's just licensing the OS to whoever wants to build to the reference platform, you know? And I think that's more of a way this market's going to go in years to come, where the race gets even tighter between who owns that 1% that's left, you know, between Apple and Android. So we'll jump into our after show, gentlemen. Always appreciate the candor here and some of the stuff we get to discuss. It's always a little enlightening. I want to just, before we finally close out, I just want to talk about a couple other Patreon questions, because some of them we've already answered, but some of them I think still have a place in the conversation here for sure. And it's always interesting to get kind of an outside perspective. Like I'm interested to see what Alex is going to have to say next week, you know, when he jumps back on and has something to say, because he's always got an interesting viewpoint on these things. He's like, yeah, I'm getting the Pixel next week.
The
I'm interested
iPhone
to see.
lookalike.
Yeah, dude, I saw. I'm like, whoa, that's too much bezel. Like, that's DTEC 50 level bezel right there, man. I can't.
I always
Can't
hold
do
my
it.
reservations with like renders and press pictures and stuff like that, but I don't know, man. I can't feel that phone at all. It
Yeah.
just doesn't look great. It doesn't.
Their differentiation is still going to be on the software, which is so similar to what BlackBerry's trying to do anyway. You
Yeah,
know?
but then eventually everybody else gets that anyways because it's Android. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't
Just
wanna
like you know, the iPhone got waterproofing eventually. Rico asks here, did they announce actual figures of device sales last earnings? And I believe they did. It was 400,000
Oh, yeah.
units. Down,
What's his
down 100. Was it? I thought they did 500 last.
Yeah, I think they did like 500,000 last quarter or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it was down.
Yeah.
That's
kind of just.
That's almost
you know?
like the most amusing part of this is that like nobody actually concentrated on the numbers or the financials out of it. I mean, there was, you know, the regular typical sites that did, but everybody just ran with the we're ending hardware portion of the news rather than the actual financials behind it all.
Rather than the actual earnings for the company. Mike asks here, who are PTBB Meran Puti, and do they give us any hints toward future licensing partners of hardware? I believe the company they partnered with is like Typhone in Indonesia, and they're just another, you know, smartphone maker. It's they, again, one of those second, third tier players who does these types of licensing deals to help, you know, elevate the ability that they are able to go to market. So does it tell us a little bit about who's to come? Yeah, I think we're gonna get similar deals for different regions and things like that. I mean, you got to think of it like Vodafone also used the Alcatel TCL reference to build their own carrier branded phone. So the deal is not so, you know, there's a lot of things that could go on to build something out to have more licensees come on board. And I personally would like to see maybe like Sony or, you know, one of those other kind of, what's that word everyone likes to use? Beleaguered. One of those other beleaguered Android makers out there kind of come together and to fight the big guys. That would be kind of cool. Brandon, you see any? Yeah, what was that, Blaze?
You know what's kind of amusing is if you actually like type in Typhone and you go to like the Google search or like Google Images and stuff like that, you'll see like, I'm not saying that it's accurate because Google Images just sort of puts whatever out there, but there's like knockoff Blackberries that are built by Typhone, like using the keyboard and everything. It's kind of crazy. So
yeah,
I mean,
that's the point, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
Like,
So
okay.
like basically, rather than creating a knockoff BlackBerry keyboard, now this organization could essentially just build a real BlackBerry keyboard.
Oh my God. I have to put this up there, guys, just so people can see, because this is like exactly what Blaze is talking about, and it's hilarious. That's the one thing about the Indonesian servers; they take forever to load. Let me load this up. Like, this is a phone made by Typhone. It's like, we're gonna rein that in. We're gonna rein that in. It looks like BBOS. Like, this is maybe a partner that is, ads are the worst. But yeah, I mean, like, look at that. Like, that's a Typhone, right? In Indonesia. Of their own hardware partners at some point, right? Somewhere down the line. And if you go through the larger list, I mean, you see a bunch of devices that look very similar to stuff we've seen before. So to see that piece there. Brandon, do you see there's a potential for any other types of partners out there? You know, be they smaller,
I don't know.
like maybe Sony jumping on board, or not really?
That'd be cool. If Sony jumped on board. I think Sony's got their own issues, though.
Yeah, Sony has their own problems that would work out.
Yeah.
Who doesn't, though? You know,
More
what I'm
money,
saying?
more problems. You know, that's what I always say, man. More money, more problems.
Right. I hear that.
Right. We
No, I still got some more here. There's some interesting ones still to go. That was Mike's. If we continue on, Sean has, first of all, I'd like to take a second to thank the Upstream crew for their dedication over the last few years. Through it all, you've shown your support, not only to BlackBerry, but more importantly to us, the viewers. For that, I truly thank you. Question: give me one word that describes BlackBerry's latest announcement on the outsourcing of hardware. His word is relief. What's your word, guys? Mine at this point is kind of like, I'd say like the word next. It's like, move it along. Like, this is not news. Keep going, you know, next. Like, what else? What else we got? Because this is something I think that's been echoed around for quite some time. What about you guys? What's your one word that describes the latest news?
my word, yeah. James. It would be brave.
Mm.
You know how like Apple is brave to get rid of the headphone jack?
Yeah, they were bold and brave, right?
Very.
You're bold to drop
BlackBerry's
hardware.
Brave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bold new world. What about you, Blaze? What's your word?
Finally. Honestly, he took mine. It was kind of relief because, I mean, as you know, James, before we went on air, and as I said in the Upstream chat the other day, I'm actually kind of relieved in some ways to hear the announcement because of the fact that it adds clarity to their messaging. And basically, although arguably there's more muddiness that was created after it, but whatever, it adds some clarity to those people who were essentially hanging on and, you know, really unsure of what the situation would be in the future. And, you know, finally they went ahead and they announced it. Like, it's no longer something that is like waiting in the wings, or, you know, nobody has to worry about it. You know, you get that sigh of relief that they actually finally announced it, and now that it's out there and it's dealt with, then you can, you know, move on. Like James said, move on, look towards the future, and deal with it as it comes.
John Chen's like, I got IoT boxes I gotta go sell.
I got truckers I need to talk to.
Yeah. I got IoT in Atlanta. Waldo's here says, I unfortunately didn't get to listen to the after show until the news was released in the quarterly statement. The after show was very positive about numbers and the continuation of hardware. How hard did it hit you guys when it was announced that the hardware section was to be shut down? I mean, did it hit you? Was it like, whoa, this is actually happening? Or is it kind of whatever?
No. I mean, it's been happening like for a while.
Yeah.
Like we thought. We even said, like, on this show, like, half a year ago, we're like, this is what's going to happen. You know, no, not really. I think we said it was going to happen, that they were going to outsource and stuff, but I think we are also kind of thinking that they might save the design for premium devices, but no. So I guess it's a bit of both. Didn't see it coming, but also did in a weird kind of way.
Yeah. It's more weird. Like, we always like harp on BlackBerry for like not just coming out with it, like not being straightforward. And like when they are, we're like, whoa, you know? Oh man, they were upfront this time.
Damn it.
The one thing they had to be upfront with, it almost felt like playbook. Like, it felt like the same kind of setup, right? Like, we hear the earnings and like some news gets slid on the side, and that just takes away everything in terms of the focus. But honestly, you know, all of our upstream patrons, like, it's honestly because of you that we keep it going at the rate we do, because even BlackBerry seems to be kind of winding down on the development and kind of what's going out. but it will be fun. I
Mhm.
mean, BlackBerry's honestly keeping Blaze pretty busy this year, right? At least two reviews he's gonna have to do. So.
It's true.
I mean, last year was a little light, right? I mean, we had Priv. That was like it. So, I mean,
I don't know,
it's
man. I
definitely
might have to start importing them from Indonesia just to go ahead and review them. So who knows?
that's like I hope they whip Typhone into shape, you know, and get those devices cranking out. It's gonna be crazy because they might explore things that like BlackBerry just can't, you know, to a broader user right now. And who knows what the specs are gonna look like and all these other aspects. It's definitely interesting. There's even alleged rumors that, you know, there's some manufacturers that are going to be launching BB10 devices or are like lining up, quote unquote, to, you know, license some of their stuff, be it Android, their distribution, or be it BB10. And who knows, right? And I honestly think that's how open the conversation is at this point. You know, who knows? Anyway, guys, let's jump on this after show. Should be pretty quick. We're just talking that one TechCrunch article with the interview with Ralph Penny, going deeper into kind of the hardware focus there. You guys can catch us on that. Hit us up on berryflow.com/Patreon. We out. Peace.